Hey, y'all, we want to thank y'all for tuning in for another segment of the all-new, brand-new James Airy Show, where not only do we talk about the things that are bothering me, but we also talk about the things that are bothering you. And on tonight's show, y'all, yeah, I ain't had to go far from this one, y'all. I went to Collin County Courthouse in McKinney, Texas today, and man, when I tell you, y'all, Russell Wilson, he came out swinging. He came out with the gloves off, or you could say even had them on. But y'all, listen, on tonight's show, y'all, I didn't go and I ain't watched this from, somebody else live stream, y'all. I was actually at the courthouse myself. And listen, when I got there, I made it there this morning about I must have made it there about 6:30, because I wanted to make sure that I had a spot. I wanted to make sure I'd be able to get in. Wanted to make sure I'd be able to bring this information back to y'all. But it wasn't until I got there I realized that a lot of people were coming out, and I began to ask them questions. I want to know why y'all coming out, and then I found out, y'all, that cell phones were prohibited. They didn't allow you you couldn't have no Apple Watches, no recording devices. They didn't allow any of that. But y'all, you know what? I had something that, right now, I don't care what nobody say. This may be the old school way, but it's undefeated. I had my pen, my notebook, and then I had two good eyes. So, while I was there, y'all, I finally decided going up to the door probably about 7:30, because, obviously court started at 9. So I wanted to make sure that I had a seat. And so I got inside, y'all, and I started, seeing what was going on. We got in the line. Now take it about 8:30, we had a line that it had a J swing on it, y'all. It was just that long. So they went through the process to count how many people that they were going to be able to allow in. And just so happened, I was just shy of being underneath that 100 people that they let in. And they surprisingly, they got started on time. They weren't playing around, y'all. When 9 o'clock came, they had us all in there. We were all seated, and we went through the little, the housekeeping or the house cleaning, whatever you want to call it. We went through that, and they said what to do and then what not to do. And in this process, y'all, while I was standing outside, I saw the dream team come in. I saw the parents, come in. It was the guy, I can't think of his name, the guy with the Action News Network. I seen him out there. There was lots of people out there. They were all wearing purple in solidarity with Karmelo Anthony. And y'all, son too, man, they got started at 9 o'clock, but when we got to probably right around about 9:18, look, y'all, I watched the courtroom start to struggle with his own video system, and again, listen, when you're dealing with technology, you're going to always have some issues. So, I don't even really contribute that to being their fault, but you would think that because it is the courthouse, you would think that, they would have somebody that's on top of that. And they did bring in an IT guy to go ahead and get that issue resolved. But I heard the arguments over, the public access, from Judge Roach's media interviews, and whether the public could still trust his impartiality. So then, y'all, approximately about at 10:05 this morning, the visiting Judge Sid Harle came out, and he granted the motion to remove Judge Roach from Karmelo's remaining post-trial proceedings. And tonight, y'all, I'm going to be taking you inside the courtroom minute by minute and separating what I personally witnessed on the inside from what, a lot of people were possibly saying online. Y'all see this right here? These are the notes these are my talking points. Ain't nobody emailed these to me. You know, these are the notes that I took, you know, while I was actually in the courtroom. So we're going to take it from the top, y'all. You know, here's what happened. You know, like I told you before, Russell Wilson came out swinging, took the gloves off, you know, and, you know, he immediately requested or asked for the prosecutor, he asked the judge if it was okay for Karmelo to have his shackles removed. And listen, y'all, they had the boy shackled from head to toe. But, you know, when Russell requested that, you know, the judge said, yeah, you know, hey, listen, I don't have any problem with that. And listen, before we say that, y'all, let me just be clear. Judge Roach, he ain't just voluntarily step aside. You know, the visiting judge, Sid Harle, granted the defense the motion to recuse him. Now, y'all, this don't mean that Karmelo Anthony is going to receive a new trial. No, that's not what I'm saying. It basically means that Judge Roach will not be the deciding factor, or he will no longer be remaining on the post for these particular trial issues. And he even said in himself that, you know, he's probably going to be trying some more cases this year. And I'm going to get to that in another video here in a little second. I'm going to show you guys, which is real important. Y'all want to make sure y'all stick around for that one, because that video that I'm going to show y'all, that's exactly where Russell Wilson hung his hat. And he did really, it was an interesting job on how he did that for him to make his point. So the motion for a new trial is that's gonna be the next major battle, y'all. So today, Karmelo Anthony, you know, his attorneys, they won the right for him to have another judge examine their arguments, but they did not win the new trial. Well, at least not yet. So, so yeah, I want to go ahead and show to y'all this video here so y'all can see exactly how the crowd reacted after getting that good news that Karmelo was going to be able to recuse Judge Roach. Share this video with y'all here.
We begin with breaking news in McKinney as Karmelo Anthony works to appeal his conviction and seeks a new trial. Within the past hour, the judge who presided over the murder trial has been removed from the case. Let's go straight to our JD Miles, who was inside the courtroom when that decision was announced. So, JD, what can you tell us?
Well, Karen, from everyone I've spoken to in the legal community, they found this decision today very surprising. But as Judge Sid Harle, the visiting judge, said himself when he made this ruling, this was far from a typical murder trial. The hearing lasted only an hour. The only evidence presented was 18 minutes of a raw interview that Judge John Roach did with a media outlet 2 days after the verdict in June. The defense tried to use that interview to show that the judge was biased by saying he agreed with the jury and other things. And in the end, the visiting judge agreed and granted the recusal.
Now, this is that video, y'all. It's that video that I was telling you about that I'm going to be showing you guys here in a little bit. It's going to be coming right after this video right here. So y'all make sure y'all stick around for that one.
Now, earlier this morning, there were protests and there were demonstrations and chants outside the Collin County Courthouse. I was inside the courtroom where Karmelo Anthony appeared for the first time since the last day of his trial. He was in a dark green prison jumpsuit with shackles. He looked noticeably thinner. The judge allowed the defense to remove those shackles during the hearing. After the defense played audio of the interview, appeals attorney Russell Wilson argued that the judge violated canons of conduct not to speak about the case when a case is pending or there's an impending hearing, which in this case is the appeal.
Now, listen, I want to hear from y'all. I just want to know what y'all thoughts are. Now, if you are a presiding judge and you have a case or trial in your particular court, your court, not my court, not Collin County's court, but in your court, do you think that you should be allowed to speak on that particular court, on that particular case, when that case is all the way live right now? That's one of the things that one of the things that Russell Simmons had a problem with, and we're going to get to that here in a second.
Visiting judge didn't agree with everything the defense said, but in his ruling, he said, quote, "In my opinion, there was a period where a motion for a new trial could be filed, and I believe Judge John Roach believes he can be fair in this matter. I believe he can be fair in this matter, but that's not the test."
I think it is surprising. I think most observers probably thought that was not going to happen, that Roach didn't do anything outside the bounds of his judicial canons or judicial responsibilities, and the judge here in the case obviously disagreed. So now there's a new judge that will be appointed, and the hearing for motion for new trial goes on. This doesn't speak to whether or not the motion for new trial will be granted or not. This just speaks to who the judge will be that will be presiding over that hearing.
And that was longtime Collin County criminal defense attorney Todd Shapiro. He's not connected to this case, but he offered some legal analysis there, and he made it clear that this does not necessarily mean anything about what's going to happen tomorrow when there's a motion for a new trial, because the evidence that the judge heard today was based on something that happened 2 days after the trial when Judge John Roach gave an interview. So we're going to be hearing completely new evidence in this motion for a new trial tomorrow. The administrative judge over North Texas, Ray Wheelis, will announce who that judge will preside over that hearing will be any minute now. He's probably already made that decision. It just hasn't been announced yet. When that happens, we will be back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. when supporters of Karmelo Anthony are expected to be out here, when the attorneys will be back in the courtroom, and the defense, the appeals attorneys, will be arguing for a new trial based on a whole new set of reasons. That's the story from here in Collin County. Live, I'm JD Miles, CBS News, Texas.
All right, y'all. Now, like I told y'all before, though, man, we had around 8:30. I had put my foot inside of the building. We were well in line right now. I had watched Karmelo defense the Dream Team. I had watched them come in and everything already. And it was a lot of Karmelo supporters out there. You know, I even saw, can't remember that pastor's name. It'll come to me here in just a second. But Friendship West, Pastor, Dr. Reverend Freddie Haynes from Friendship West. He was out there, y'all. And I had a chance to speak to him specifically myself. And his exact words were, I feel hopeful. And I asked him, I said, hey, do you think this is in the step in the right direction? And he said, absolutely. So it just wasn't, pastors out there, community leaders. I think I've seen the fraternities out there, and there's different supporters, or different supporters that were associated with that Black Panther Party as well. So y'all, around 8:34, about 8:34. The legal team that came in, and as they were coming in, y'all, the crowd, they cheered. I mean, it was almost like we were at a pep rally, y'all. And you could actually see, how they had the place really, really secure. Some of the bailiffs, the sheriffs that were out there, y'all, they had some big old guns too, but obviously they felt like that was needed, and upon each entrance of the courtroom, they had metal detectors just to make sure that, you weren't bringing your cell phones in there, you didn't have any recording devices, and also, hey, make sure you ain't have, any weapons on you, right? So before, anyone argued, a single point about, law and what had happened, man, y'all could actually hear, you can actually, feel, that this hearing was, it was large. I mean, it was definitely bigger than the courtroom, because, a couple of people in front of me, well, one particular lady that was sitting in front of me, y'all, she actually she actually, I heard her praying out loud, even though housekeeping had been done. And the bailiffs told us that, hey, there's no talking, there's no noise inside of the courtroom. I could honestly hear one Pacific lady that was praying out loud in the courtroom. And y'all can tell you, man, the Lord, he sure have a funny way of bringing you back down to your knees and bringing you back into remembrance of him, so that you know that he is the Alpha and the Omega, and he is all. And people, from what I see, people, they came because they believe the process itself was now on trial. So we're in there, right? Russell Wilson starts doing his thing. Around 9:05, the court, they handled their announcements. They finished up with that. The court did their housekeeping, and we were told that no entry was reportedly allowed until they took a break. They call it a recess. Now, y'all, around about 9:12, that's when they brought Karmelo in with his legal team. Then around 9:13, Judge came in. Judge took the bench. Around 9:15, like I told you before, that's when Karmelo Anthony's, his attorney, Russell Wilson, requested that the handcuffs be removed. And this is where you stop and describe, what couldn't be found in the court, filings. This is not something that you could just make up. When I looked at Karmelo, he ain't look like, a happy camper, although he did have a slight smile on his face. He didn't look like somebody that was in the best mood. And I can tell that he did look like he had lost a little weight. I can kind of tell, within his posture, and his facial expressions, even with his interactions, with his attorneys. And where's my notes at? I observed his parents when they were in there too. His father was there and his mother was there. His father was wearing a black suit, white shirt with a sharp bow tie on. His mom, she was wearing some sort of like a kind of like, I don't know, because we weren't in the actual courtroom. We were in what they call that overflow room, y'all. I can't really tell you exactly what color it was, but it looks like it was maybe like a peach or beige, something along those lines, with a white shirt. But, at any rate, with his interactions with the attorneys, his parents, their demeanor, the whole crowd's, their reaction, the room, it became silent. And, I mean, I ain't trying to, like make it more than, what it was, but, it was just a silence in the room, a room that a lot of people, they were hopeful. And, I can tell you what his face looked like and, how he carried himself. But, y'all, I just can't even tell you. And I can only imagine, what he was thinking, when you looking down the shotgun or the barrel of 35 years. So, y'all, here we are now. We're in the overflow room. I told y'all we had, issues. We came in, there's 4 TVs in the room. 3 of the TVs were working when we got there. IT came from downstairs and, TVs went blank. Now, a lot of people were inside, they were thinking, oh yeah, well, hey, this is the part of the plan. But man, listen, I'm telling y'all, even with the technology that I'm operating with here, y'all, right here in front of me, y'all, I'm telling you, it really, ain't that easy. And what I can tell you, when you're dealing with electronics, it's kind of like in my world with construction, what can go wrong, it will go wrong. And so they had some struggles, that we had to witness firsthand. So this particular room, it had been approved with the video feed, but we found out from the bailiffs after we kept saying, hey, we can't hear it, the audio's bad, and this is around about, 9:18 when those TV screens, they went out. And we were telling the bailiffs, hey, listen, we can't hear anything. The screens are out, and it's kind of hard to hear it. And the bailiff stepped out for a second, then he came back. Then the bailiff came back and told us that, we're unable to see the video in our particular room because they're actually playing or displaying the video in another room. Hey, y'all, listen, I don't know. I'm not the IT guy. I don't know. So around 9:20, approximately 3 of the 4 screens, like I say, they returned. They came back to life. Well, and then a little bit later on, we actually got that 4 screen. And again, we were told that it was something wrong with the main television in the main courtroom because we were in the overflow room. Now, around 9:29, they decided that they wanted to go ahead and play this video. And I'm going to get to that video here in a second, y'all. The one that where Russell Wilson hung his head on. Now, here's the irony part, this whole fight, y'all, involved, whether the original trial was sufficiently open to the public, and why was it open to the public? Yet, during the hearing, they had an issue. Russell had an issue with it being about public access, meaning, those of us that in the overflow room temporarily could not see the material being discussed. Now, then, to be fair, y'all, look, I'm not claiming that anybody, they did anything intentionally by shutting down any videos, anything like that. It just flat out could have been a technical failure. And I'm telling you exactly, what I experienced. So now we're here roughly right around, yes, it's probably, what are we here? It's probably about 9:30 now. Now this is where Russell Wilson side, they challenged Judge Roach's continued involvement based on several issues. They hung their hat and they kept mentioning the fact that the restrictions on public and the media access during the original trial, it kind of it infringed on the Sixth Amendment right, to have a public trial. And, because Judge Roach did that interview 2 days while the trial was still live, his statements that the jury, he made some pretty bold statements. His statements were that, either the jury reached the correct verdict. His description, of Karmelo Anthony's was that he was a really, really nice, young man who committed a crime. But public statements defending his courtroom decisions, whether those comments created a reasonable question about impartiality, that was one of them. That was a huge problem. So, the defense, they did not have to prove that Judge Roach secretly hated Karmelo. All right. They didn't have to prove that. I don't think that was the case. The real question was whether or not his public comments and his conduct could cause a reasonable person to question whether or not he could fairly judge challenges to his own earlier decisions. Now, I have to play this video here for y'all here now. You got to play this video for y'all to see exactly, to put some context here too. Where Russell Wilson was going with with his argument. And share that screen. That's not it. Bear with me 1 second, y'all. Move. There we are.
So that was normal for me. What wasn't normal for me is to have those witnesses be intimidated by things being said on social media, because those young people rely on social media more than I certainly do. And so that sure impacted me to make sure that they did not change their testimony. They were willing to come in and tell the truth without fear of being doxxed or swatted and stuff. And so I took every precaution that I could, consistent with the law, to make that happen.
I know Steve brought it up to you, and I know both sides probably brought it up as well. The AI images of people claiming to be inside this courtroom.
Yeah, that ticked me off a little bit, because if you're going to call yourself the press, and people are going to depend on you to tell them what's going on in this courtroom, you should be telling the truth. And so Mr. Stoller, a public information officer, brought it to my attention that some news outlets were posting photos saying from inside the courtroom. And it wasn't my courtroom. It wasn't the witness. It wasn't their testimony. And that's tragic.
All right, y'all. So here's what Judge Roach is saying right now. There was a couple of social media posts that was floating around in the media. I even saw some myself. With AI now, sometimes you don't know if it's real or it's fake. And so Judge Roach is saying that, hey, it's some videos that were floating around, with the pictures of a courtroom, and he's saying it wasn't his courtroom. He's saying it was another courtroom, and there's only limited amount of seats inside a courtroom,
because again, that's
where I was. All right. They said that it was going to be roughly right around about, 70 seats. Well, when I got there, then I found out, there were 100 seats. And so when the bailiff came through, he counted it out. He went row by row, or he went person by person. He kind of counted it out. And that's how we all were able to, get in there. So, when you're dealing with a, case of this magnitude, you got the entire public trying to get in, y'all. But then there's only maybe 100 seats, 70 to 100 seats available. So, and so the judge is basically saying that what he tried to do is he tried to strike, a balance, right? To get people in, and then, so that he can actually have, allow them to see exactly what was going on as well. He'll go on here in a second to say that, hey, people really wanted to be inside, then they should have just came in and they could have just stood in a line. I'll take a look at that.
Reads the narrative that these people want to cultivate in our community to drive a wedge between us. And I think that's terrible.
Since we're on the topic of image, can we talk about some of the drawings of
Sure,
you during the sketch art?
absolutely.
What do you think? What do you think?
My wife would show me a drawing every once in a while of a court case going on. I couldn't figure out who the judge was. And that's all I'm serious. The sketch artist was awesome. She was very sweet. She was here every day, putting her life's work into those images. Because we didn't have cameras in the courtroom, that's the only visual that anybody got. She did a marvelous job. I think I'm more handsome than what she portrayed overall, but I'll let everybody else figure that out.
All right, y'all. Now at this point, Judge Roach, he's doing a pretty good job, right? He's kind of holding the line, but here in a second, y'all see where and sometimes I've been in sales for years, y'all, and sometimes you can oversell something, right? And I think here in a second, y'all gonna see exactly where I'm talking about, where Judge Roach kind of oversold this a little bit, and I think that's where he got in trouble. Y'all continue to take a look at this.
Did the jury get it right?
Yeah, they did. You know why? Because they were picked based upon the law. They listened to the facts. They happened here in this very courtroom, and they got a verdict. And so that's the process. And whatever they say, they get it right.
There's going to be a lot of scrutiny over voir dire, and you denied the defense, and the dismissing of 3 jurors who at least identified as African American on their bioforms. What did you make of that moment?
Well, that's not exactly how it works. The defense didn't dismiss them.
I'm sorry, the defense raised an objection.
They raised an objection. Yeah,
Yeah.
They have raised an objection. Like I told you before, as long as I follow the law, I sleep well at night. And I'm telling you, I follow the law in that case. Did I know what the perception was going to be? Sure. I knew in the back of my mind what the perception was going to be. But I'm not here to satisfy perceptions. I'm not here to satisfy agendas. I'm not here to do any of those things. I'm here to follow the law. And I did it to a T. And I'm proud of that. Very proud of that.
Is this your last big trial?
It's my last big trial. The sad part about it is, I will tell you before I leave at the end of the year, I'll try a couple more murder cases, for example. The parking lot won't be full. The gallery won't be full.
And that's it, y'all. And he said he followed to the T. Listen, I mean, there's just never no, perfect science, y'all. I don't care if you're baking the cake. You can put, your 3 eggs in there. You put that 1/3 cup of oil. You can do all of that. Put the temperature just right. But, it's just not a perfect science, to getting that perfect cake. And when Judge Roach said he followed to the T, I think that's where the problem started right there, because Russell Wilson, he kind of hung his head on that, and you'll see this here in a second when Russell Wilson started talking about the, judicial conduct and the rules, or as they call them canons.
Of people watching the case, but we still have somebody who's died and someone accused of doing the killing, and it won't draw the attention that this case did, and their death is no less tragic than the tragic death of the young man in this case. And so, big trial, I guess, from an outsider's perspective, and the social media and the media interest in the case. But crime still happens in Collin County, and every single person deserves to have as fair of a trial that Karmelo Anthony had.
What's your take on Karmelo Anthony?
All right, now I got to commend Judge Roach for this. All right, take a look at this, y'all. Watch what he says about Karmelo Anthony.
I don't know. I really don't know.
You've had a lot of defendants in your courtroom.
I have had a lot of defendants in my courtroom, and I talked to Mr. Anthony a couple times because I'm legally required to go over some things with him. He seems like a nice young man who committed a crime. And he understands today, more than any day before today, the consequences of committing a crime like he did.
Last question.
Yes, sir.
The future of the justice system.
The only thing better than wearing a well-made gun belt is knowing you got it on sale. For a limited time only, our handmade in the United States.
What do you think about it when you realize you have all these social media influencers and citizen journalists?
I don't know. I hope that the judges that hear cases, period. I was about to say high-profile cases, but that's not it. It's just any case. Realizes the importance of their job, and their job is to be fair to the state and to the defendant, and to protect the people that come before them and make just and right decisions based upon the law. And if we can do that, that's great. The influence of social media, I think, is going to continue to impact our communities everywhere. And I hope that we can rely upon our justice system to weed through the noise and find justice for everybody who comes through our doors.
This is a personal question I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
Do you understand why the legitimate media had to be a pain in your ass?
Legitimate media. There's this guy named Jobin, who I think was probably the worst of all of them. And no, I didn't understand how he could be that way. Look, I absolutely understand the media's role in all this. I mean, it's the First Amendment for a reason. It is absolutely the First Amendment for a reason. But at the same time, a defendant has a right to a fair trial, and the prosecution has a right to a fair trial. That's also in the Constitution. And so you just have to balance all those interests. And I'll honestly say, I think I balanced it well. And I know I made people mad, but I'm not here to make them happy.
And y'all listen, that's what the prosecution the entire time while I was in there, y'all, that's what the prosecution continued to say. They continue to say that Judge Roach and the prosecutors, they maintain the fact that the original trial was fair. Then the state, they went on to argue, that Judge Roach, he followed the law. And then, the state, they pushed back, against, the suggestions that social media pressure should influence the court. Now, even while I was, inside, after, leaving out of the courtroom, there's a lot of people, they were kind of they felt as if, hey, we are the media, and what we say or what we report should be able to influence, what's going on. And so the state, they pushed back, against the suggestion that, that media pressure should influence, the court. And so the prosecution, they disputed defense characterization of, the earlier proceedings. Now, y'all, what I can tell y'all is this, fair coverage, that don't mean, that I can, sit up here and pretend that both of these arguments were, equally persuasive, because I think one of them was more persuasive than the other one, which is why Karmelo Anthony Russell Wilson was able to get Judge Roach recused. Basically what this tells me is that, what both sides argued before, I can tell you, which one that carried the most weight today.
Either. I hope that the Metcalfs think that their son got a fair trial in this courtroom, as do I hope that the Anthony family thinks their son got a fair trial in this courtroom. I certainly think he did.
Did you feel the pressure of the other courts not being able to operate too?
So, of course, they're independent elected officials. They can operate if they want to.
Yeah, and some of them have.
They have.
Virtually. Yeah.
They have. We were trying to cut down on the sheriff's duty to transporting back and forth and stuff. And so I asked them if they could modify the way they are operating in court. They could go to Zoom like we did for a long time. They could, pick days that we weren't here, like on that first Tuesday. But it's up to them.
Okay.
So in a nutshell, y'all, that's, one of the main reasons why Judge Harle granted the recusal, because he felt that Judge Roach should not have did an interview 2 days after, while this case was still live. And Judge, Harle, he kind of went on and explained that the recusal,
It helped a lot.
The recusal, the process that Karmelo Anthony is in right now. He even said it in court today. He said, "Hey man, listen, I'm gonna tell y'all, that's a really, really high bar. I haven't seen too many of those, recusals be successful. Then he also went on to say that, that he personally believed in Judge Roach, and he believed that Judge Roach could remain impartial. But, that personal belief, that wasn't the controlling factor. The concern was whether or not the circumstances could be reasonable and create questions, about impartiality. So, y'all, the ruling, it didn't declare Judge Roach, to be guilty of, misconduct. It basically just declared that the public confidence in the process, it mattered enough to, require them to get another judge. That's for sure. So
They cooperated.
at this moment, y'all, now's the time. We're about at 10:05 right now. 10:05 is when they announced that Karmelo, Judge Roach is going to be recused. At this moment, y'all, that's when they said, you know what, we're going to go ahead and take a recess. And y'all, at that moment, not in everybody that was inside of that overflow room that I was in, y'all, that's when everybody got up and then they went outside. And that's when you could say the celebration, that's when the celebration began. And I want to play that clip for y'all too, y'all. I do. I want to play that for y'all so that y'all can see the excitement. See the excitement that was on the outside of the courtroom from my eyes, because I was right there. Y'all take a look at this.
Free Karmelo! Free Karmelo!
Let's remain hopeful and prayerful that justice is indeed served. We are not insensitive to the fact that a life was lost, but we also don't believe that two lives should be lost through injustice.
All right, y'all. Now, while we were out there, you know, a lot of those people that you see there on the screen, really, really nice people. People that just they want justice. People that actually care for Karmelo. And while I was out there, y'all, I just began to ask them questions. I wanted to know, well, I mean, what brought you out here?
Needing a therapist.
What brought you out here today? Because, you know, I'm sure a lot of the people there, like myself, you know, had work, but I want to know why they came out today. And I talked to this one lady, and then she began to tell me what this meant to her, because she's got grandsons and, you know, she's got sons. And, you know, she also described how, you know, this could possibly be one of her sons, you know, one day, you know. And another person, I asked him, I was like, hey, you know, so, I mean, is this a victory? I mean, do you, how do you see this? And then, you know, they say, well, hey, I wouldn't call it a victory, but they did say, hey, it's something that's better than nothing. And, you know, I agree with them, you know. Now, whether or not, you know, y'all, that they described it as a victory, or, you know, a lot of people out there, you know, they were just hopeful. I can honestly say that either way, this made room for the next step. This is, you know, the next move, you know, towards their expectations, you know, for to get in a new trial. And it was done peacefully too. So regardless of whatever you may hear and say, oh yeah, you know, oh, they were loud and obnoxious out there, you know, hey, I think you gonna find some rotten apples in any bad bunch, right? It don't matter race, creed, gender, you gonna find them. But this particular day, I can honestly say, because I was there on the outside of the courthouse, people, they were hopeful, they were excited, and they were still praying. Even Freddie Haynes, before we left, you know, he decided to just do a prayer right there on the sidewalk of the courthouse. But, you know, I got to tell y'all, you know, it ain't the same thing as a legal victory when you're dealing with a case or a conviction of this magnitude. Now, this case today, y'all, what it did, and I can see that happen, you know, what this did, we basically just, we went to the door, we twist the doorknob, and the door, it opened. Now, tomorrow, y'all, that's going to be a whole different argument, because that's going to determine whether or not if Karmelo gets a chance to walk through that door. So y'all, in a nutshell, y'all, my biggest takeaway from all this is that, justice, it's not only about the final verdict. Sometimes a lot of us, we okay with taking some small W's, right? Then just getting the big W, because we know we continue to get small W's, we continue to get small yeses. Then at some point we're being hopeful and we're praying that we're going to get that one big yes. So, I got to ask y'all after, watching this video, and this is just part of it. I may have to do part 2 on this one because it was pretty lengthy and I didn't really get a chance to get into my notes as much as I wanted to because it was so much happening at one time. But I got to ask y'all this. If the public can trust this particular road that we on right now from what they've done today, do you think that this new judge that they're going to be appointed, do you think that it's possible for Karmelo Anthony to get a fair verdict? I want to hear what y'all say. Y'all make sure y'all leave a comment. Because today, y'all, the court, it decided that Judge Roach shouldn't be no part of it. They made that clear. They said, oh, Judge, listen here. Thank you, but no thank you. They did that today. And it was based on, they're saying it's based on his conduct and his decisions. But, look, that don't erase Karmelo Anthony's conviction. It's still there. He got a chance to come outside and see a piece of the general population. But, at 10:05 or shortly after that, they had to take him back to the big house. And so, him coming out, just to see the general population, then just for a few hours, that don't erase the conviction, and it don't guarantee a new trial either. But what it does, it guarantees that they've heard the request from Russell Wilson and the drill team, the dream team, man. So y'all listen, I don't know these boys, but it looks like they worked some miracles today in the courtroom. And shout out to, the dream team, y'all, for coming through, putting their foot down and moving like T.I. expeditiously, and y'all, I'm going to be back out there again tomorrow because, like I said, this was a small win today. So I'm going to keep showing up. And I ain't going to be just coming to show you, necessarily what I believe, but I'm going to be coming and showing up to show you guys exactly what happened. So we want to thank y'all for watching, this particular show of the Karmelo Anthony recusal trial. And y'all do me a favor, man. You make sure you go ahead and share this video. Share this video and make sure you turn on your notifications, because I'm going to be following this motion for a new trial pretty closely here over the next couple of weeks. And maybe I'll get a chance to kind of compare, what happens on the inside of the courtroom with, what actually gets reported by the mainstream media. Until the next time, y'all take care.